Hey guys, how's it going? I am Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch League Roundup. So yes, the week 4 of the Overwatch League Stage 1 is over. And it's been an interesting week, we gotta say that. An interesting week because of some of the games that were going on. There were some really potentially close games. Potentially close is what I'm highlighting here, because we kicked off with the Los Angeles Valiant taking on the Philadelphia Fusion. I expected this to be quite close. Two teams with, at the time, identical records. Now, the Fusion, their problem is that they can blow very hot and cold. They can be good in one match and then pretty terrible in the other. They got 4-0'd by London Spitfire at the start of the campaign. But then they've been picking up, pretty good wins, including against New York Excelsior, which is a real big upset. You would not expect New York Excelsior to lose to Fusion. Anyway, the Valiant beat Fusion, but they beat them 4-0. I expected this to go to 5 maps, and it didn't. I'm really surprised the Valiant actually managed to get a 4-0 in this, and that's telling of the Valiant, and I think that's the Valiant saying, we want to be the best team in the West right now. But there is another team that's vying for that spot, and we'll look at them in a minute. But after that, we had the Florida Mayhem taking on the Los Angeles Gladiators. Now, this one was a difficult one to call. I expected the Gladiators to win it, and they did, and they won it 3-1. I did kind of expect Florida to perhaps take a map off them, as they did. It could have been a 5-mapper, but again, the Gladiators got the job done. And we're kind of seeing where these teams lie in the league now. Gladiators are not quite up there with your Valiant, who are just chasing the leading pack at the moment, with the leading 3 being Seoul, New York and London. So Valiant are in a chasing pack, and then the Gladiators are kind of in the pack below that with another team, like San Francisco Shock, who were taking on the Houston Outlaws. Again, this was 3-1 to the Houston Outlaws. San Francisco are going to stick in that little place with the Shock, and Houston are vying for Stage 1 playoffs here. They're up there with Valiant and Fusion. So this is a good result for Houston, but they did lose their map winning streak. The Shock took that from them. So it's difficult. They go into the next match after that 19 games to 1 loss. So it's a pretty good record, you got to say that. Then I'll just touch back on the Florida Mayhem. Florida Mayhem are kind of, it's difficult for Florida right now because they're in that spot where they're just above Shanghai, but not quite touching Gladiators and Shock. And then you got Dallas Fuel between the Florida and the Shock and that. It's very difficult at the bottom of the league, but all you need to know is Shanghai at bottom. Philadelphia Fusion go into their second game and last game of the weekend. And this was against the Dallas Fuel. Now, I expected this to be quite close. Even though the Fuel are finding it difficult recently, I expected this to be quite close. But again, the Fuel still having problems, mainly with comms. Again, they have a signing coming in, AKM I believe it is. Could make a difference here. But this was a 4-0 to Fusion. Big result for Fusion. They needed to win that match. They needed to win that match, and they needed to win it comfortably for map differential, which we'll get into a bit later. But that was a 4-0 for Fusion. Dallas again, problems. They're not going to make Stage 1 playoffs. They need to turn this around, but Stage 2 they might be a bit stronger considering the Mercy meta is falling away now. And in Stage 2 we're going to get those changes to Mercy and Junkrat, so we'll see more Moira, more Lucio, and perhaps more Slambulance quad tank. Moira meatballs, stuff like that, which plays into the hands of the Dallas Fuel. Chips Hyan likes playing his Moira. Then after that we had the other big team at the top of the league, New York Excelsior, taking on the Shanghai Dragons. No surprises here, 4-0. New York Excelsior. Basically, the Dragons looked like they'd improved, but they couldn't compete with New York. New York, possibly one of the best teams. Well, they're one of the best teams in the league right now. Are they the best team? We'll get on to that later on, because after this, We had the game that I predicted last week as the blockbuster match of the weekend. London Spitfire taking on the Seoul Dynasty. I predicted this to be a 5-mapper, and it wasn't. Seoul got torn apart by the London Spitfire. We couldn't have predicted this. London Spitfire beat Seoul 4-0. Now, Seoul are favourites for this league this year. And London tore them apart. And I think the thing with Seoul, right? They are very, very good. They can get into a game. They read how you work, and then they counter that. They adjust in game and counter that. That's why they're so good against a lot of teams, right? But the difference is when you come up against something like London Spitfire. London Spitfire have 12 people in their roster. The merged teams of GC Busan and C9 Chengdu. Both very, very good teams. And this adds an element of unpredictability to Spitfire. They can run a lot of different hero comps, a lot of different rosters, and they can surprise opponents. The first 2 maps, they played a lot of Huyol and stuff like that. Then Seoul didn't start out with Rouge Hong, which is a real surprise to everyone as well. Seoul then adjusted to this, but London saw it coming, and then Fury and a lot of the other roster coming, I think it was about 4 changes, come in, and suddenly Seoul are like, oh god, we need to adjust again. If you don't give Seoul time to adjust, and you keep changing the way you play, Seoul will find it difficult. They will find it difficult. Whereas Seoul, if you don't have that unpredictability, then Seoul can kind of work you out slowly but surely. Which is what they've done to a lot of teams. I think we found that with the Dallas Fuel game. You're going to find that with the lower the league teams, especially things like the Florida Mayhem. I mean, Seoul will storm Florida simply because Florida have 6 players. Actually, they have 7 now. I think Florida has signed Zappis, a tank, I believe. Don't quote me on that. I'll find out for later in the video. Anyway, moving on. So that was a pretty big shock, and that you've now got to say London possibly better than Seoul. New York have also beaten Seoul. So perhaps Seoul are falling behind the 2 other Korean teams. Very interesting, but now we have to see a fight between New York and London, break out for that top of stage 1 rank. Moving on to the next 3 batch of fixtures. San Francisco Shock taking on the Mayhem. The Florida Mayhem I expected to come out in this game and give San Francisco Shock a real run for the money, but I did expect Shock to win it. I just didn't expect Shock to win it 4-0. Yeah, Florida have got some problems. And I'm hoping perhaps the signings can sort this out. Because I expected Florida to be slightly more powerful than they have been. Again, we also expected Dallas Fuel to be a lot stronger, but look what Dallas Fuel are right now. Let's not get into that conversation. Moving on, we have Seoul taking on Houston. Houston, the informed team in the Overwatch League at this point. Seoul coming in off the back of a quite substantial loss to London. It wasn't just a 5-map 3-2 close loss, it was a 4-0. Seoul really didn't turn up. In fact, in the London game, they only got 2 points the whole match. The first 3 maps, they didn't even score a point. That's amazing from London when you think about it, and slightly scary. But we'll move on to London later because they've got another game. Seoul get back to winning ways in this one. Houston took them all the way. It's a 3-2. They took them to the very last map on Lijiang. But the problem with Houston was Linksa was ill. He could not play their star DPS. They also have Jake, but Linksa I would say is their star DPS, and without him, it was a bit awkward. Clockwork tried to step up, but it didn't really happen for them. But they really did put up a good fight against Seoul, but Seoul got the win they really needed. If they'd lost that match, Seoul would have been in a bit of trouble for Stage 1 playoffs here. They would have been in a bit of trouble. They're now 6-2 instead of 5-3. 5-3 would be the same scoreline as Philadelphia right now. So Seoul got themselves out of a hole. Then we have the Gladiators taking on Boston. Now I expected Boston to win this because Boston are looking more stronger than we thought. But I thought Gladiators would honestly put up a fight. They didn't. Again, Gladiators are a bit of a fusion case because Gladiators they either turn up or they don't. They turned up against the Valiant. Yes, they lost 3-2, but they turned up against the Valiant, and then they go and lose 4-0 to Boston. If you can go 3-2 against the Valiant, I would have thought you could kind of beat Boston. But again, it's on a day. Sometimes Gladiators turn up, sometimes they don't. But this was a 4-0 to Boston. It was much more convincing than I expected it to be. And it puts Boston in a very good position as well. But later on, they had a game against Valiant, which we'll go on into in a minute. So then we had our last three fixtures of the week. And London Spitfire were up first in these three. And they had the Shanghai Dragons. This was a 4-0. We weren't expecting any differently. It's been a really good week for London Spitfire. And as we'll see in the standings in a minute, it's really helped them in their effort to claim Stage 1. But moving on from that, Dallas Fuel were taking on the New York Excelsior. And this is what bugs me about Dallas Fuel. This was a 3-1 win for New York, but Dallas gave a good account of themselves, and their pedigree came out in this match. You can see that they can compete with the very top teams in this league, but for some reason they just can't find form against all teams in the league. If they could beat the bottom half of the league, then they can really give the top half of the league games. They could find themselves in the Stage 1 playoffs, but they're not going to happen. It's not going to happen now. It's impossible for them to get into the playoffs. But I really think Dallas Fuel will turn it around in the Stage 2 of this season. But the crucial thing is Dallas Fuel took a map off of New York Excelsior. This had big implications for not only New York, but London. Because Dallas Fuel took a map off of New York Excelsior, Excelsior couldn't reclaim top spot in the league. So London Spitfire have taken that. But we'll move on to the standings in a minute. Then this was a big match coming up after this, because we had the Boston Uprising taking on the Los Angeles Valiant. Now, Valiant were considered the best in the West at the start of the season because of Dallas Fuel's problems. Now, Valiant are a bit up and down at the moment, I would say, because Boston gave them a 4-0 to round off the weekend, and that's a real surprising scoreline. I think it shows the pedigree of the Boston team, which were expected to really struggle coming into this season. Plus, it also says that Valiant have a lot to work on. Boston exposed a lot of problems within Valiant, and Valiant just did not look the team they should be. So, this had big implications, and now we'll take a look at the standings, because obviously now we have a new top team in the Overwatch League in the name of London Spitfire. Followed up by the New York Excelsior and then Seoul, who have got that crucial win against Houston to go third. But Houston are still in a very good position. You look at their map difference, it's better than Seoul, because of their so many 4-0s they had in a row. Whereas Seoul have been taken to some extra games at times. They've even dropped games against Shanghai Dragons, which is an interesting one. So Seoul have kind of not done their map differential any favours, whereas London Spitfire certainly have. And so have Houston. Houston have won a lot more maps than Seoul. But New York Excelsior still in that mid-range. They are one map away from London. So next week is going to be a really crucial week to see who claims top spot of Stage 1. Boston up to 5th, which is a really good result for Boston. We would not have expected them to be anywhere near that. We were expecting them to be down with Florida Mayhem somewhere. So this is a really good start to the season for Boston. I'm wondering whether the meta is working within their favour, so whether that might change with a new meta change in Stage 2, we yet to see. Valiant, lower than we expected. I expect Valiant to be in that 4th spot, and they're not going to be. And Philadelphia Fusion, again, up and down team. We'll see where they get through, but their map difference is really not going to help them in their push for the playoffs in Stage 1, so I'm not expecting Fusion to make the playoffs. Shock Gladiators, same results. You know, they're not going to get to the playoffs for stage 1. It's just a case of building for the next stage now. They need to work out some problems. The same goes for Dallas, Fuel, Florida, and Shanghai, to be quite honest. But Florida and Dallas are making signings. Shanghai, I haven't heard of any signings yet, nor the Gladiators or Shock. So, it's an interesting one, but some things need to be ironed out. But remember, in Stage 2, for Dallas Fuel, not only will they have AKM signed, they will also have XQC back from his ban. So, that could be something different, because we could see a bit more... Because Dallas are a bit more conservative at the moment. XQC offers that real attacking sense of Winston and stuff like that, which could change Dallas for the better. But it's interesting to going into next week because it's a big toss-up between 3rd and 7th for that last place. Can someone knock Seoul off? Maybe. The fixtures actually say that Seoul are going up against Valiant. Now, this is crucial. If Valiant can beat Seoul, now based on their performance against Boston, they can. But if Valiant can beat Seoul, then that really throws a wild hat into the ring. That means Houston also have London and Spitfire to go up against. So, again, that's another one that could have a big impact on the end of this stage. But we're kind of looking at... I mean, London Spitfire taking on New York Excelsior. I'm expecting both of them to be in Stage 1 playoffs. So, what will happen then? And the playoffs will probably be decided by them. Plus, there's also Houston taking on Boston. A lot of the middle pack are playing each other next week. And it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. Boston, Philadelphia. It's a very interesting week coming up. So, it's a big week next week. Week 5, the end of Stage 1. Are we there already? This week is going to be slightly different. We are going to get our regular matches, but at the end we'll get some more matches for the end of Stage 1 prize pool, where the top seeded teams go against each other. Should be very interesting. There's money involved. It's like 125,000 US dollars. A lot of moolah, a lot of money. Right. Some big games for some big teams in this. Especially London Spitfire. You want to watch out for that one. And Houston. But we start off with the Shanghai Dragons taking on the Dallas Fuel. Again, this game doesn't have a lot of meaning for Stage 1 playoffs. Because neither team is going to reach them. But it does have long-standing effects. I would expect Dallas Fuel to win this one. Come on, Fuel. Don't mess this up. I don't know whether Shanghai might try and take a map off them. It's a difficult one to tell. It depends what Dallas turn up. But I would expect Dallas to win it. San Francisco Shock taking on the Los Angeles Gladiators. This is going to be a very close match. Don't expect this to be implementing on the Stage 1 playoffs. Again, too far down the league right now. But this is a big grudge match between the lower mid group. Both of these teams are in it. Both of these teams are very similar. Depends which Gladiators turn up. If the bad Gladiators turn up, San Francisco should win it. If the good Gladiators turn up, they might even 4-0 San Francisco Shock. It's a very difficult one to call, but I would like to go for the Gladiators in this one. Big game after this one. Los Angeles Valiant taking on the Seoul Dynasty. This has implications on the Stage 1 playoffs. Seoul are in them currently, but Los Angeles are looking to get into them. Houston are also looking to put a problem into this. This is a big match. Valiant is a must win. Must win for Valiant. But it's also a must win for Seoul. So it's very difficult. I would expect Seoul to win it though. I would expect Seoul to win this. Philadelphia Fusion taking on the Boston Uprising at 10 PM GMT on that day. This is a difficult one to call. This is a really difficult one to call. Boston are looking good. Boston are looking good. But Fusion. It depends which Fusion. Again, like the Gladiators, it depends which Fusion turns up. Bad Fusion could be a 4-0 for Boston. Good Fusion could be a 4-0 for Philadelphia. So it's difficult one to call. I'm going to go with Philadelphia for now. Moving on, just after that, but actually next day GMT, we have the Florida Mayhem taking on the New York Excelsior. I am not expecting any problems for New York here. New York should win this one comfortably. Whether it will be a 4-0 or 3-1, I don't know, but I would expect them to win it comfortably unless Florida want to try and cause a shock. Big game at 2 AM GMT on the Friday though. London Spitfire. It's a very, very, very big week for London Spitfire. They had a very good week last week. Or this week. But the week coming up, week 5, is a massive, massive week for London Spitfire. They will take on the Houston Outlaws at 2 AM on Friday. Houston, this is a must-win for Houston. Must win this game. Especially if Valiant beats Seoul. Especially if Valiant beats Seoul. Because Seoul have a slight edge at the moment. Whereas Valiant are kind of playing a bit of catch-up right now. It's a very difficult one to call. But based on this week's results, I will go for London Spitfire in this one. It's going to be a very interesting game, that one. Will Lynxer be back? That could be key for Houston. I would expect Lynxer to be back. So that could be key for Houston. Could really, really come in handy if they can get Lynxer fit. Moving on to the Saturday. Midnight on the Saturday, you have Los Angeles Gladiators taking on the Dallas Fuel. Again, this is a bit of a lower mid kind of thing going on. I can depend on which Gladiators turn up. So difficult with Gladiators and the Fusion because you don't know which one will turn up on the day. If the Gladiators don't turn up, Fuel can win this quite comfortably. And they might even win it even if the Gladiators turn up. It depends what Fuel will turn up as well, because Fuel can be good when they want to be. But if Gladiators can turn it on like we know they can, then the Gladiators could win this fairly easily as well. So this is a very up in the air game. After that, at 2 AM, the Seoul Dynasty will take on the San Francisco Shock. I would expect Seoul to win this one. I would expect Seoul to win this one quite comfortably. San Francisco, I don't think they've quite got the firepower to go up against Seoul. So I would expect Seoul to win this one quite comfortably. 4 AM on that day, the Los Angeles Valiant taking on the Shanghai Dragons. Similar thing, I would expect Valiant to kind of stomp over the Shanghai Dragons. The Dragons really can't compete at the moment with the way their team is. They're lacking a really good Genji player. They rely a lot on hit scan. But Dragons could take a map, but it's either going to be 3-1 or 4-0 to Valiant, I think. More likely 4-0. Then we get into the last 3 games of the stage. Regular, mind. Regular. Remember this. This is the blockbuster game of the weekend in the regular fixtures. New York Excelsior taking on the London Spitfire. Seeds 1 and 2 at time of recording, depending on what the games do before. Seeds 1 and 2 in the league. This will tell you who is currently best in the Overwatch League. Will it be London? Will it be New York? New York are very good. Very, very good. The big teller here is New York. Can you handle the unpredictability of London Spitfire? London Spitfire can roll a lot of stuff. Can you cope with changing so very often to cope with what London do? This will be a big, big game. I would expect these two teams to be in the playoffs by the time this game goes on, though. So they might have some... They might be resting some players. We'll see about that. It's difficult, but I wouldn't expect them to rest them because, again, the table stands, you know. The current standings will keep going until the end of the season, including Stage 2 and Stage 3 and Stage 4. So I'd expect them to put out fairly good rosters, but they might be thinking about those prize pool games. After that, at 9 o'clock PM GMT that day, we have the Outlaws taking on the Boston Uprising. This is a difficult one. I would expect Houston Outlaws to win it. But Boston could turn up and cause a bit of problems some problems for Houston. Especially if Houston come in this after a loss against London Spitfire. Boston could upset something here. They really, really could. And it could be crucial for Boston. Boston need to win their 2 games. It's as simple as that. They need to win their 2 games if they have any hopes. So, after that, it's the last game of Stage 1, proper fixtures. Remember this, there's 2 more fixtures after this. But I can't tell you about them. Florida Mayhem taking on the Philadelphia Fusion at 11 PM GMT. I would expect this to be a win for the Fusion, even if bad Fusion turn up, to be quite honest. Florida don't look like they're happy at the moment. If bad Fusion turn up, it could be a 5-mapper. If good Fusion turn up, it'll be a 4-0. Fusion are a very up and down team at the moment. But then we have some extra matches. Considering it's the end of the stage, you have the end of Stage 1 playoffs. These will take place on the Sunday at 1 AM and 3 AM GMT. Great. I'm going to have to stay up on the Sunday. Just realised that. The prize pool. You will get a 1, 2, 3 and 4 seed, I believe. The top 4 seeds in the league in the standings in the playoffs will go into this. I would expect the 3 Korean teams to be in there. I think it's now a battle for that 4th spot, unless Seoul lose to Valiant. That could cause some problems for Seoul. If Seoul beat Valiant, then I expect it to be New York, London, Seoul, and a Western team. Which Western team this can be? It could be Fusion, it could be Valiant, it could be Houston, it could be Boston on the off chance, I think, but unlikely. I'd expect it to be between the 3 of Fusion, Valiant, and Houston. I would back Houston at this point. The only problem with Houston is they have a difficult few games, whereas Valiant have a game against Shanghai Dragons, which they could easily 4-0 and give them map differential advantage, which comes into play massively at this stage. But they will take place, and then the winners of that will go on and take home that $125,000 US dollar prize pool. And that will be the end of Stage 1. And then we will go on a break. I can't remember how long the break is. Let me have a look. 2 seconds. The league recommends for a Stage 2 on February the 22nd. Stage 2 will be very interesting because you'll have the Mercy Junkrat changes. The map pool will change, I believe. You'll start probably to get things like Hanamura, Kings Row, Volskaya, maybe Blizzard World. I don't know whether they are going to bring in Blizzard World at that stage. I would assume they do. You would think, but I don't know. But expect the map pool to change. They'll bring in I've just forgotten what its name is. That's embarrassing. They'll bring in new maps anyway. Maps that haven't... There's an 8-map pool. And then they'll bring what I would have thought... Whatever maps haven't been used so far, they will bring in Stage 2. You will get all sorts of stuff going on. And it will be interesting because you'll get to see what these teams do on the different maps. We haven't seen these teams on Hanamura yet. Or Volskaya. Or Kings Row. That's the one I was thinking of. So it'll be interesting to see that in Stage 2, but let's not get on to Stage 2, that's way ahead, and I can talk about that after the next video anyway. So, that is it for this Roundup video. It's interesting, it's very interesting, it's gonna be a big week ahead. This is gonna be a big teller for the rest of the season, I think. Obviously we'll have the meta changes, which should work in the favour of teams like Dallas Fuel. And people who don't tend to like a Mercy in the team. But the Korean teams can adjust to this. Both Spitfire and Dynasty have played under metas where Mercy is not really involved. So have New York. So I wouldn't expect them to struggle in a new meta. But we also saw New York ruin Seoul with a Mora Meatball comp on Horizon. So they know how to change things up. The biggest winners out of the new meta that might come in Stage 5, I would say, would probably be Dallas Fuel. Especially with the additions they're probably going to make, and one they've already made. I expect Dallas Fuel to really pick it up in Stage 2. And also, all the transfers will go through. And those players will be able to be picked for their team in Stage 2, which will make everything very interesting. But for now, I'm going to leave it here for this Overwatch League Roundup video. Thank you so much for joining me if you did, and I will see you next week. See you then.